A 9-year-old beggar girl walks into a hospital on a cold winter night, carrying two newborn twins in her arms. And when she reveals who these twins are, the medical staff calls the police, leaving everyone in shock. The digital clock in the emergency room read 11:47 p.m. when the automatic doors hissed open, letting in a blast of icy wind that sent papers fluttering at the reception desk. Sarah Martinez, the head nurse on the night shift, looked up from the paperwork she was organizing and, for a moment, saw no one. It was only when she lowered her gaze that her heart seemed to stop for an instant. There, trembling like a leaf in the wind, stood a girl who didn't look older than 9. Her dark hair was tangled and covered with small, melting snowflakes. Her clothes, obviously several sizes too big for her thin frame, were soaked, but that wasn't what took Sarah's breath away. It was what the girl was carrying. In her small, shaking arms, wrapped haphazardly in thin, dirty blankets, were two newborn babies. "Please," the girl's voice was barely a hoarse whisper. "They need help." Sarah had experienced dozens of emergency situations in her 15 years as a nurse, but something about this scene caught her completely off guard. In seconds, her training kicked in. "Dr. Thompson," she yelled, running toward the girl. "We need help here, now." The child was so exhausted that her legs gave out as soon as Sarah reached her. With the swift coordination that comes from experience, the nurse managed to catch both the girl and the two babies before they fell. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Sarah asked, helping the girl sit in one of the reception chairs. "Emily," she replied, her teeth chattering from the cold. Her eyes, however, never left the babies for even a second. "Please take care of them first. They're really cold." Dr. Thompson arrived at a run, followed by two other nurses. His eyes widened as he took in the situation, but his voice remained calm and professional. Lisa, take the babies to the pediatric ER. We need to warm them up immediately. Check their vitals and prepare the incubators." The nurses moved to pick up the babies, but Emily tightened her hold, reluctant. "It's all right," Sarah reassured her, placing a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder. "They're professionals. They'll take very good care of the babies. You can come with them." Emily hesitated a moment longer before allowing the nurses to take the twins. Her eyes followed every movement with an intensity far beyond her years. While Dr. Thompson left with the nurses and the infants, Sarah stayed with Emily. She took off her own coat and draped it over the child's shoulders, noticing how violently she was shivering. "Emily, you're freezing. We need to take care of you too. Can you tell me how you got here with those babies?" The girl swallowed hard, her gaze still fixed in the direction where the twins had been taken. When she spoke, her voice carried a surprising maturity. I saw everything. I saw when he abandoned them." Sarah felt a chill run through her that had nothing to do with the cold. "Who abandoned them, Emily? The man in the black car." He left them in the alley, behind the abandoned store on 5th Avenue. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, as though reliving the scene. "I was in my usual spot, where I sleep, when I saw the car pull up. I thought it was just someone throwing out trash, but then..." Her voice caught. Sarah's heart tightened. Her usual spot. The girl was homeless. How many nights had she spent alone in the cold? "Keep going, sweetheart. You're safe here." He got out of the car carrying a basket. He seemed nervous, looking around in every direction. When he set the basket down and I heard crying. Emily opened her eyes, now filled with tears. "It was them, the babies. He just left them there and ran back to the car." Sarah fought to keep her voice steady. "And you went over there?" Emily nodded. "I waited for him to leave first. I didn't want him to see me, but before..." She hesitated, then stuck her hand into the pocket of her soaked coat, pulling out a crumpled, wet piece of paper. "I wrote something down." "Wrote down what?" "The license plate." Emily held out the paper to Sarah with trembling fingers. "I learned it's important to pay attention to details. Sometimes when people toss out food at restaurants, I memorize what time they usually do that. And when I see something bad happening, I try to remember everything that might be important." Sarah took the paper carefully, feeling a mix of admiration and sorrow. A 9-year-old girl, living on the streets, had already learned to be more observant and cautious than many adults. "Emily, that was very smart of you." Sarah put the paper away safely. "But tell me something, how did you manage to carry 2 babies for—" She paused, realizing she didn't know the distance. 15 blocks, Emily answered, a hint of pride in her voice. "I used my blanket to make a sort of sling, like the ones moms use to carry babies, you know. I saw it in a magazine once, but it was really cold, so I had to stop several times to check on them and warm them up a bit." Sarah felt tears gathering in her own eyes. This small homeless girl had shown more humanity and bravery than many adults she knew. "You saved their lives, Emily. You know that, right?" Emily finally tore her gaze away from the direction of the ER and looked directly at Sarah. There was an impressive depth in those young eyes. "I couldn't leave them there. I know what it's like to be alone in the cold." At that moment, Dr. Thompson returned to the reception area. His face was serious, but not alarmed. "The babies are stable," he announced, and Sarah felt Emily relax slightly at her side. "They really are twins, 1 boy and 1 girl. They're newborns, probably no more than a few hours old. They have mild hypothermia, but they're responding well to treatment." "Emily," he knelt down to the child's level, "you probably saved their lives tonight." Emily nodded, but then her face twisted with worry. You're not going to give them back to him, are you?" "No, absolutely not," Sarah answered firmly. "In fact," she exchanged a meaningful look with Dr. Thompson, who nodded, "I think it's time we call the police." Emily's face went pale. "The police?" "Yes, but don't worry," Sarah quickly reassured her. "You're not in any trouble. In fact, you're a hero. But we need to report what happened and find the person who did this. Because of the license plate I wrote down. Exactly because of that. You were very clever to record it." Sarah hesitated for a moment before continuing. "Emily, while we wait for the police, how about we go check on the babies? And on the way, we can stop by the cafeteria. You must be hungry." For the first time since she arrived, a small smile appeared on Emily's face. It was shy and hesitant, as if she wasn't used to smiling. "I can really see them." "Of course you can, after all," Sarah smiled back. "You're their hero." As she helped Emily stand, Sarah noticed the girl was still shaking, though now it seemed more from exhaustion than cold. How long had it been since she'd slept in a real bed? Eaten a hot meal? Felt safe? Dr. Thompson was already on the phone, his voice low but urgent as he called the police. Sarah knew the next few hours would be intense. There would be questions, reports, investigations. But for now, her priority was the little hero by her side. "Come on," she said gently, guiding Emily toward the cafeteria. "First, let's get something warm in your stomach. Then we can see the babies, okay?" Emily nodded, but then stopped suddenly. "Sarah?" "Yes, thank you." The word was simple but laden with meaning. "For believing me." Sarah felt her heart twist again. How many times had this little girl been ignored? How many times had her words been dismissed simply because of her circumstances? "Always, Emily." Always. As they walked down the hospital corridor, Sarah couldn't help thinking that this cold winter night had brought more than 2 abandoned babies to her shift. It had also brought a small warrior, whose courage and compassion defied both her age and her circumstances. And something told her this story was far from over. In the hospital's quiet cafeteria, while Emily sipped hot chocolate with still trembling hands, Sarah observed the girl closely. There was something special about her, something beyond her heroic action that night. A wisdom in her eyes, a strength in her spirit that seemed far too mature for 9 years old. The distant sound of sirens began echoing outside, gradually growing louder. Emily tensed at the noise, but Sarah placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It's okay," she assured her. "You did the right thing, and I'll be here with you." Emily nodded, clutching her mug of hot chocolate as if seeking comfort from its warmth. The sirens grew even closer, and both of them knew the story would have to be told again very soon. But for now, in that quiet moment in the hospital cafeteria, there was only one brave girl, one determined nurse, and the beginning of what promised to be an extraordinary story. Detective Marcus Silver was known for his meticulous nature. In 20 years on the force, He had built a solid reputation for finding patterns where others only saw chaos, but as he looked at the crumpled piece of paper in his hands, something told him this case would be different. "The girl is sure about these numbers?" he asked Sarah, who stood protectively by Emily's side. The little one had finally fallen asleep on one of the hospital beds, exhausted after hours of questioning. "Absolutely," Sarah replied firmly. "Emily may be young, but she's extraordinarily observant, and she understands the importance of details." Marcus nodded, studying the sequence of letters and numbers Emily had written. The handwriting was uneven, clearly written in a hurry, but perfectly legible. For a homeless child who'd likely had little to no formal education, it was impressive. "Rodriguez," he called to his partner, who was busy photographing the blankets that had covered the twins. "Run this plate." Officer Carlos Rodriguez picked up his tablet and began entering the data. Marcus took the moment to approach the bed where Emily slept. Even in slumber, her face carried a worried expression, as though she couldn't fully let her guard down even in her dreams. "How long has she been on the streets?" he asked Sarah quietly. "We're not sure. She doesn't talk much about her past." Sarah adjusted the blanket over Emily, but from what she hinted in our talks, it's been at least a year. "A year?" Marcus shook his head. Over the course of his career, he'd seen dozens of cases involving homeless children. Each one affected him deeply, but there was something especially poignant about Emily. Maybe it was her courage in saving the babies, or maybe it was that gaze, too mature for her age. "Silva." Rodriguez's voice pulled him from his thoughts. His partner was staring at the tablet with a strange expression. "You need to see this." Marcus walked over, taking one look at the screen to understand Rodriguez's reaction. The plate was registered to an official government vehicle. "Well, that complicates things," Rodriguez muttered, running a hand over his face. "We'll need a special clearance just to access the logs for that vehicle's use." Marcus frowned, his mind already churning through the implications. An official government vehicle abandoning newborns in an alley. This was far more than a typical abandonment case. "Dr. Thompson," he called to the doctor who had just walked in. "How are the babies?" "Stable," the doctor replied, glancing at his notes. "They've fully recovered from the mild hypothermia. They're healthy twins, probably born within the last 24 hours before they were abandoned. The boy and girl are at normal birth weight, with no signs of complications. So it was likely a medically assisted birth," Marcus concluded. "In a hospital or clinic?" "No doubt," Dr. Thompson agreed. "The umbilical cords were cut professionally, and the babies received proper initial care. Someone with medical knowledge was involved." Marcus exchanged a meaningful look with Rodriguez. That meant there would be records somewhere, assuming they hadn't been deliberately omitted or altered. "We'll need warrants to check all local hospital and private clinic records from the past 48 hours, he said. "That's going to take time," Rodriguez cautioned. "And with an official vehicle involved." "I know," Marcus cut him off, his voice laden with experience. "But we have two things working in our favor. First, we have an eyewitness. Second," he nodded at the twins sleeping in their incubators, "we have physical evidence." "DNA doesn't lie." Sarah, who had been quietly listening, stepped forward. "And you have me. I'm a witness to the condition in which Emily arrived with the babies, and I can confirm every detail she shared." Marcus offered a slight smile. The nurse had spirit. That would be helpful in the days to come. "I'll need your official statement," he said, "and we'll need photos documenting the blankets, Emily's wet clothes, everything. The more physical evidence we have, the better." "I already photographed it all," Rodriguez confirmed, "and I requested they preserve the girl's soaked clothing as evidence." "Good." Marcus looked at Emily, still sleeping soundly. "Now we need to decide what to do with her." "She stays with me," Sarah declared without hesitation. At the officer's surprised looks, she continued, "I'm a registered social worker as well as a nurse. I can request temporary custody while the case is investigated." Marcus studied Sarah for a moment before nodding. "That would be ideal. She trusts you, and we'll need to stay in close contact with her during the investigation." "And the babies?" Dr. Thompson asked. "For now, they need to remain under medical care," Marcus answered. "Once they're cleared, they'll be placed in a specialized infant shelter." He paused, choosing his words carefully. But given the circumstances, it would be wise to implement extra security measures. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. You think there might be an attempt to— Let's not assume anything yet, Marcus interrupted. But an official government vehicle involved in abandoning newborns, that's going to draw attention from powerful people. Not all of it will be friendly. Sarah hugged herself as a shiver ran through her. Do you think Emily might be in danger? We're not going to let it get to that point, Marcus assured her, his voice firm. But we need to be cautious. Rodriguez, I want an unmarked patrol car making regular rounds by Nurse Martinez's house. And Dr. Thompson, I'll reinforce security in the pediatric ward, the doctor promised. And I can assign a specific, smaller team to care for the twins. The fewer people involved, the less chance of information leaks. Marcus nodded, satisfied. He was about to give more instructions when his phone vibrated. Checking the message, his expression darkened. What is it? Rodriguez asked. The captain wants a preliminary report. Immediately. He put away his phone, looking thoughtful. That's too soon. Normally, we'd have at least 24 hours before the first report in an abandonment case. Someone's already pulling strings, Rodriguez murmured. Exactly. Marcus looked around at the hospital staff. Listen, from now on, everything about this case is strictly confidential. No casual hallway chats, no speculation. If anyone asks, it's a routine abandonment case under investigation. They all nodded, understanding the seriousness of the situation. Dr. Thompson, I need the baby's medical reports as soon as possible. Sarah, I need you to prepare all the paperwork for Emily's temporary custody. Make it as official and bureaucratic as possible. Rodriguez, I'm already getting the forms ready for the warrants, his partner interjected. Marcus looked again at Emily, and then at the twins in their incubators. 3 innocent lives, linked by a series of events that hinted at something far more significant than a simple case of abandonment. Let's do this right, he said, his voice filled with determination that everyone in the room could sense, because something tells me we're only scratching the surface. As the team dispersed to tackle their respective tasks, Marcus lingered, observing the scene. Emily slept, finally safe after her heroic night. The twins breathed softly in their incubators, unaware of the storm their arrival had unleashed, and somewhere out there in the city, someone powerful was likely already maneuvering behind the scenes. The investigation was only beginning, and Marcus had the feeling that the real complications were yet to come. The following hours were a whirlwind of controlled yet intense activity. Rodriguez set up discreet security around the pediatric wing, placing plainclothes officers in strategic spots. Dr. Thompson reorganized schedules, handpicking a small team who would have access to the twins. Sarah filled out form after form, building a bureaucratic fortress around Emily's temporary custody. And Marcus watched everything with a vigilant eye, mentally connecting invisible dots. The sudden ring of his phone shattered the silence. It was the third call from the captain in less than an hour. Silver here, he answered, keeping his voice neutral. Where's that preliminary report? Captain Roberts' voice was tense, almost anxious, a rare tone for a normally calm superior. Still gathering essential data, sir. We have a complex situation here involving minors. We need to follow all protocols. There was a pause on the other end. When Roberts spoke again, his tone had changed. Listen, Silva, maybe it's best to hand this case off to the abandonment division. They have more experience with all due respect, Captain, Marcus interrupted gently. Given the involvement of a government vehicle, it might be more prudent for us to keep this investigation. Another silence, longer this time. Who mentioned a government vehicle? Marcus allowed himself a small smile. It's in the preliminary report I'm preparing, sir. I'll have something more concrete on your desk in a few hours. The call ended abruptly, and Marcus slipped his phone back into his pocket, his smile fading. The captain's reaction only confirmed his suspicions. The information about the official vehicle was already making its way through higher levels. Problems? Rodriguez asked, approaching with a stack of documents. Not yet, Marcus replied, taking the papers, but they're coming. What do we have here? Forms for the warrants, as you requested. But Rodriguez hesitated. Something strange happened. I tried to access the official vehicle database and hit a barrier I've never seen before. We need higher-level authorization just to see who was assigned that car last night. Marcus nodded, not particularly surprised. Keep trying through official channels. Meanwhile, he lowered his voice. Do you still have that IT tech friend who owes you a favor? Rodriguez flashed a small smile. I'll make some calls. As his partner walked off, Marcus turned back to Emily, who was beginning to stir in her sleep. Sarah was instantly at her side, placing a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder. It's okay, the nurse murmured. You're safe. Emily slowly opened her eyes, momentarily disoriented, then recognized where she was. The babies, was her first word. They're fine, Sarah assured her. Do you want to see them? The girl nodded, sitting up carefully. Her gaze found Marcus, and he saw that surprising maturity in her eyes again. Did you find out who owns the car? She asked bluntly. Marcus stepped closer, choosing his words cautiously. We're working on it. Do you remember any other detail about the vehicle? Anything could help. Emily closed her eyes briefly, concentrating. It was really clean, shiny, and... She furrowed her brow. There was a small sticker on the rear window, on the driver's side. What kind of sticker? Round. Blue and gold. She opened her eyes. Like an official seal, you know, the kind you see on important documents. Marcus and Sarah exchanged a significant look. The girl had just confirmed that it wasn't just any government car. It belonged to a high-ranking official. Emily, Marcus said softly, you have an incredible eye for detail. This will help us a lot. The girl shrugged, a faint blush on her cheeks. When you live on the street, you have to notice everything. Before Marcus could respond, Rodriguez returned in a hurry. Silva, he called, tension evident in his face. We have a problem. I just got a call from headquarters. They're sending a special team to take over the case. Under which jurisdiction? State security. Marcus felt his stomach drop. State security meant serious politics, and it also meant someone high up was moving faster than expected. How long do we have? They're on their way. 20 minutes, maybe less. Marcus looked at Emily, who watched the conversation with sharp eyes. He had to move quickly. Sarah, take Emily to see the babies now. Rodriguez, start digitizing all the documents we have. Dr. Thompson, I'm already making backup copies of all medical records, the doctor said, catching the urgency. Marcus knew that once the state security team arrived, his access to evidence and witnesses would be severely curtailed. They needed to preserve everything they could in the next few minutes. Emily, he said, walking over to the girl who was now standing, ready to go see the babies. You've been so brave and smart. Because of you, we're going to find out what really happened. The girl met his gaze with those wise eyes. They're going to try to hide it, aren't they? Marcus felt a pang in his chest at the child's insight. They might, but you know what? Sometimes the truth is like water. It always finds a way to come out. Emily nodded, a small smile forming. Like when it rains a lot and water finds a way through, no matter how many barriers you put up. Exactly, Marcus smiled back. The sound of elevators opening in the hallway alerted everyone. Time was up. Go, Marcus urged Sarah and Emily. We'll handle things here. Watching Sarah guide Emily toward the babies, Marcus braced for the confrontation ahead. The investigation was about to become much more complicated, but he had something those in power weren't expecting. A little witness whose photographic memory and keen intelligence could be the key to cracking the entire case. Rodriguez moved to stand beside his partner as footsteps approached. Ready? Marcus straightened, assuming a neutral, professional expression. We always are, partner, always. The doors swung open, and 3 men in immaculate suits entered, their faces grave and determined. The battle for the truth was just beginning, and Marcus knew the coming days would be critical, not just for the case but for the lives of everyone involved. The game of power had begun. Captain Roberts observed the city through the window of his office on the 12th floor of the central precinct. In 25 years of service, he had learned to sense an approaching storm, and now every instinct told him this would be one of the worst. The folder on his desk contained the preliminary report on the twins' abandonment case. Next to it, His phone kept flashing with messages and missed calls from numbers that normally wouldn't be contacting a police captain. "Come in," he said at the knock on the door, without turning around. Detective Marcus Silva entered, followed by his partner Rodriguez. Through the window's reflection, Roberts could see them, two of his best investigators, now at the center of something far bigger than a simple abandonment. "Gentlemen," Roberts finally turned around, "the state security team has officially taken over the case. You're supposed to assist with the transition only." "With all due respect, Captain," Marcus said calmly but firmly, "we still have jurisdiction over critical aspects of the investigation. The main witness is under police protection, and the witness is a homeless minor," Roberts interrupted. "Her credibility would be questioned in any court. A minor who saved 2 lives and provided accurate information about an official vehicle," Rodriguez argued. "Information already confirmed as accurate." Roberts sat down heavily in his chair. "You have no idea of the pressure coming down the chain of command. I've had 3 calls from the governor's office just this morning." "And doesn't that raise suspicion, sir?" Marcus pressed. "Since when does the governor's office care about an abandoned newborn case?" "Silva," Roberts rubbed his eyes, suddenly looking older. "Sometimes it's best not to ask certain questions. But it's our job to ask questions, sir." A heavy silence fell. Roberts stared at his 2 detectives for a long moment before speaking again. "The state security team wants to interrogate the girl. Alone." Marcus felt ice in his veins. "That's not going to happen." "It's not a request, Silva. It's a direct order. Emily is under police protection and the temporary custody of a certified social worker," Rodriguez interjected. "They don't have authority." "They have the authority to do whatever they please," Roberts cut in. "And you 2 need to understand something. This case is now bigger than all of us." Marcus took a step forward. "Captain, with all due respect, you always taught us that no case is bigger than justice." Roberts stood abruptly, placing his hands on the desk. "And who said this is about justice? Do you have any idea what's at stake here?" "Which is exactly why we need to protect Emily," Marcus insisted. "She's the only one who can—" The phone on the desk began to ring, cutting him off. Roberts glanced at the number, and his face went slightly pale. "Get out," he ordered. "Now." Marcus and Rodriguez exchanged glances but didn't move. "Now!" Roberts practically shouted. The detectives left the office, closing the door behind them. Through the frosted glass, they could see their superior answering the phone with visibly shaking hands. "This isn't good," Rodriguez muttered as they walked down the corridor. "No," Marcus agreed, "but it's not unexpected. We need to move fast." "What are you thinking?" Marcus lowered his voice. "First stop the hospital. We need to make sure the medical team knows exactly what's going on." At the hospital, tension was palpable. Dr. Thompson had gathered his small, trusted team in an isolated conference room, far from prying ears. "Let me see if I understand," Dr. Maria Chen, the head pediatrician, said slowly. "You think someone might try to tamper with the baby's medical records?" "We don't just think," Marcus replied. "We're sure. The only question is when, not if." "It's already started," Sarah added from the doorway. "Just walking in." "I've gotten 3 different calls today questioning my qualifications as a social worker for Emily's temporary custody." Dr. Thompson frowned. "Who were they from?" "That's the point. Nobody properly identified themselves, but they knew details they shouldn't have." Marcus noted the worried glances exchanged among the medical staff. "That's why we're here. You need to understand we're no longer dealing with just an abandonment case. This has become something much bigger. And more dangerous," Rodriguez added. "Yes." "What exactly do you want us to do?" Dr. Thompson asked. "First, we need to ensure all the medical records, both for the twins and for Emily, are secured," Marcus explained. "Physical and digital copies in safe and separate locations." "I've already taken care of that, Doctor," Thompson assured. "I have a friend in IT who set up special security protocols for the digital files and the physical copies. The less we know about their location, the better," Marcus interrupted gently. "And the babies?" Dr. Chen asked. "They still need constant care, which is why we need a small, trusted team," Marcus replied. "People who aren't easily pressured or manipulated." "Like Emily," Sarah asked softly. A heavy silence fell over the room. Everyone there knew the young witness was both their greatest asset and their most vulnerable point. "How is she?" Marcus asked Sarah. "Strong as always, but—" Sarah hesitated. She notices more than she lets on. Last night, after seeing the patrol car driving by, she asked if she was in danger. "What did you tell her?" "The truth, that we're all working to keep her safe." Sarah folded her arms. But she just smiled that knowing smile of hers and said she was used to protecting herself. Marcus felt his heart clench. A 9-year-old shouldn't have to carry that kind of burden. "Well, she's not alone anymore," he declared firmly. "That's why we need you all to understand the seriousness of this situation. In the coming hours and days, you'll likely receive visits, calls, and official requests from the state security team." "How should we handle it?" Dr. Thompson asked. "Follow every official protocol," Rodriguez replied. "Be cooperative, but don't volunteer information beyond what's strictly necessary. And most importantly, document everything. Every visit, every request, every conversation." "They'll try to pressure you," Marcus added. "They'll question your medical decisions, administrative procedures, professional qualifications. Be prepared." "Why so much effort?" one of the nurses asked. "I mean, obviously it's a serious case, but this level of mobilization, because whoever abandoned those babies has enough power to mobilize state security, the governor's office, and who knows who else," Marcus said gravely. "And people with that kind of power rarely like loose ends." "And we're the loose ends," Sarah concluded. "Exactly." Dr. Thompson stood, his expression resolute. "Okay, then let's make sure these loose ends stay well tied. Dr. Jen revised the pediatric team schedule. I only want people we fully trust near the twins. Maria," he addressed one of the nurses, "you're our best at documentation. Keep impeccable records of everything, duplicated and secured." Marcus watched with satisfaction as the medical team began organizing their defenses. These were dedicated professionals who understood the importance of protecting their patients, even if that meant facing institutional pressures. His phone vibrated with a message from Rodriguez, who had stepped out to make a call a few minutes earlier. "We have to go," he told Sarah. "Keep your eyes open and let me know if anything unusual happens." "Always," Sarah replied. "And Marcus, thanks for not giving up on this case." He managed a slight smile. "We haven't even started fighting for real yet, Sarah. This is just the warm-up." In the hallway, Rodriguez waited with a tense expression. "What's up?" "My contact in IT finally got some information on the vehicle," Rodriguez whispered. "It's registered for the exclusive use of the Lieutenant Governor's office." Marcus felt his stomach drop. That explains state security's involvement. "There's more," Rodriguez continued. "In the past 6 months, that same vehicle made regular visits to a private clinic on the outskirts of the city. An obstetric clinic." Rodriguez nodded. "And guess what? All records of those visits were wiped from the system last night." Marcus processed this for a moment. "They're cleaning up." "Systematically," Rodriguez agreed. "What do we do now?" Before Marcus could answer, a group of men in dark suits appeared at the end of the corridor, walking decisively in their direction. Leading them was a figure Marcus recognized immediately, the head of state security himself. "Now," Marcus murmured to his partner, "we find out exactly how much power they're willing to use to cover this up." The confrontation was about to begin, and Marcus knew the next hours would be pivotal. Somewhere in the hospital, Emily and the twins slept, unaware of the swirling world of power and politics around them. But one thing was certain: the truth was there, waiting to be uncovered. And as long as Marcus Silva was on the case, no amount of institutional pressure would be enough to keep it buried. The head of state security stopped a few steps away, his face a mask of authority and veiled menace. "Detective Silva," he said, his tone controlled but full of unspoken threats, "I believe we need to have a conversation about jurisdiction and matters of state security." Marcus kept his expression neutral. "Of course, sir. Right after you provide the proper judicial authorizations to access information about minors under police protection." The smile that formed on the man's face did not reach his eyes. "Oh, don't worry about that. Soon, All necessary authorizations will be arranged. The battle was only beginning. Sarah Martinez watched Emily sleep in the makeshift room she'd prepared in her home. The girl had finally relaxed after 3 days of constant stress, her breathing now regular and calm. Outside, a patrol car drove by on its usual round, a presence Sarah had come to appreciate. The soft vibration of her phone pulled her from her thoughts. It was a text from Detective Marcus. Emergency meeting. Now. Bring Emily. Sarah felt her heart race. Marcus wouldn't risk a middle-of-the-night meeting without good reason. Emily, she said softly, touching the girl's shoulder. We need to go. The child's eyes opened instantly, fully alert, a habit from the streets that broke Sarah's heart every time she witnessed it. Did they find something? Emily asked, already getting up. Maybe. Marcus wants to meet. Emily nodded, quickly putting on the new coat Sarah had bought for her. Should we take the long way? Sarah offered a small smile. Over the past few days, Emily had shown a natural talent for strategy and caution that impressed even the most seasoned officers. Yes, and we'll make a few random stops first. 20 minutes later, after a deliberately erratic route to shake any possible tails, they arrived at a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of the city. The place looked empty, except for Marcus and Rodriguez seated at a table in the back. Sorry about the hour, Marcus said as they sat down, but we needed to talk away from prying eyes and ears. What happened? Sarah asked, noting the tension in both detectives' faces. Rodriguez placed a laptop on the table. My IT contact finally managed to break the encryption on the clinic's records. Emily leaned forward, her eyes shining with intelligence. The clinic that car was visiting, Marcus nodded, still impressed by the girl's ability to keep track of every detail. Exactly. And what we found, he paused, glancing at Sarah. Emily can hear it, Sarah said firmly. She's part of this, as much as any of us. More than all of us, Rodriguez added. After all, she's our only eyewitness. Marcus took a deep breath before continuing. The records show that a patient had been making regular visits to the clinic for the past 9 months, always escorted by private security. The interesting part is that she never used her real name. She was listed only as Patient X. But the payments, Emily started. Exactly, Rodriguez smiled at her. Payments leave a trail. Every bill was paid by a shell company, which receives regular deposits from an offshore account. Connected to one of the closest aides of the Lieutenant Governor, Marcus finished. Sarah felt a chill. So it's not just the car linking us to the Lieutenant Governor's office. No, and there's more. Marcus lowered his voice even further. We accessed the clinic's security cameras. The footage isn't great quality, but on one visit, as the patient was leaving, the wind blew off the scarf covering her face. He turned the laptop to show a grainy image of a young woman. That's, Sarah began. Vanessa Torres, Rodriguez confirmed. 25 years old, the Lieutenant Governor's personal secretary for the past 2 years, and missing for 3 weeks, Emily finished, surprising everyone. At their questioning looks, she shrugged. I read the newspapers people throw away on the street. There was a small article about her taking a leave for personal reasons. Marcus shook his head in admiration. Emily, you never fail to amaze me. Yes, officially she's on leave, but no one's been able to contact her since the day the babies were born, Sarah concluded. A heavy silence fell over the table as everyone processed the implications. Emily broke it. Is that why they're trying so hard to cover it up? Because the Lieutenant Governor had an affair with his secretary? It's not just that, Marcus replied gently. Lieutenant Governor Richard Coleman has been married for 30 years to the daughter of one of the most influential senators in the state. A scandal like this wouldn't just affect his career, it would shake an entire network of political and economic alliances. And the babies are the living proof of that scandal, Rodriguez added. Sarah put a protective arm around Emily. That's why they're so desperate to undermine Emily's testimony. She's the only link between the babies and the official car. But now we have more than that, Marcus said. We have financial records, security footage, documented patterns, which they'll try to discredit or destroy as soon as they find out we have it, Rodriguez warned. Which is why we have to move fast, Marcus agreed, but we also have to be extremely careful. These people have the resources and influence to... The screech of a car braking outside cut him off. Through the diner windows, they saw 3 black SUVs pull up. They followed us, Emily said calmly, her voice surprisingly steady for a child in danger. Impossible, Sarah protested. We took every precaution. Our phones, Rodriguez muttered, realization crossing his face. They must have hacked our phones. Marcus was already on his feet, his mind racing. Rodriguez, grab the laptop and go out the back. Sarah, take Emily through the kitchen. No, Emily interrupted. They'll search the whole block. We need a distraction. Everyone turned to the small girl, who had a determined gleam in her eyes. Emily, Sarah began, worried. Trust me, Emily insisted. I've lived on the streets, remember? I know how to disappear. Marcus studied her face for a moment before nodding. What's your plan? Rodriguez goes out the back with the laptop. They'll assume I'm with him and focus on chasing him. Meanwhile, Sarah and I walk right out the front. Out the front? Sarah asked in disbelief. Emily smiled, that wise smile that seemed so out of place on a 9-year-old's face. Sometimes the best hiding spot is right under their noses, but first... She took Sarah's phone and removed the battery, doing the same with the others. No trackers. Marcus couldn't help but smile. Despite the gravity of the situation, Emily, you really are extraordinary. I learned to be, she answered simply. Now let's go, before they come in. The plan went off with surprising precision. Rodriguez slipped out the back, deliberately making enough noise to draw attention. As Emily predicted, 2 of the SUVs immediately peeled off in pursuit. Meanwhile, Sarah and Emily walked calmly out the front door, Emily now wearing a waitress's apron over her clothes, holding Sarah's hand like any ordinary child with her mother. They passed right by the state security men, who were busy coordinating the chase on their radios. Marcus stayed behind, ready to create another diversion if needed, but it wasn't necessary. The simple disguise and the audacious plan worked flawlessly. Half an hour later, they all regrouped at their designated fallback spot, an old church on the outskirts of town, where Father Michael, an old friend of Marcus, offered sanctuary without asking questions. That was brilliant, Rodriguez said to Emily, still in awe of how well the plan had worked. The girl shrugged, a small smile on her face. Sometimes people only see what they expect to see. They expected us to sneak away quietly, so we did the exact opposite. Sarah hugged Emily, her heart still pounding with adrenaline. You were amazing, but please, let's not make this a habit. Marcus watched the exchange with a smile, but his mind was already on the next steps. What we learned tonight changes everything. We now know exactly why they're so intent on burying this case. And we know they won't stop, Rodriguez added. If they were willing to use state security before, now they'll use everything they have, Emily finished. Because it's not just about the babies anymore, it's about power. Sarah looked at Marcus. What do we do now? The detective thought for a moment. Now, we play their game, but by our rules. Rodriguez, I want that information uploaded to secure servers, multiple backups in different locations. Already being done, his partner confirmed. Sarah, you and Emily need to disappear for a while. I have a safe place in mind, Sister Mary's shelter, Emily suggested, surprising them again. It's where some homeless kids go when winter gets really bad. No one asks questions there. Marcus smiled. Exactly what I was thinking. How did you... Like I said, Emily smiled back. I read a lot of discarded newspapers. Sister Mary shows up often in articles about helping the homeless. Sarah squeezed Emily's hand. Are you sure you want to do this? We could try leaving town and spend the rest of our lives running. Emily shook her head. No. Those babies deserve to know their real mother, and people who abuse their power need to learn that not everyone can be bought or scared away. Marcus felt immense pride for the small girl. In his long career, he'd met veteran officers with less courage and integrity than this 9-year-old. Emily's right, he said. Running isn't the answer. We fight, but we fight smart. Rodriguez, who was checking his laptop, suddenly exclaimed, Marcus, look at this. The facial recognition algorithm I ran on the clinic's security footage, it found someone else interesting. Everyone gathered around the screen. The grainy image, captured 2 weeks before the twins' birth, showed a middle-aged man slipping in through the clinic's back door. "That's him," Emily whispered. "The man from the car, the one who abandoned the babies." Marcus studied the image carefully. Even with the low quality, there was no doubt it was Lieutenant Governor Richard Coleman himself. "Now we have him," Marcus murmured. "A direct connection. And more than that," Rodriguez pointed out, typing quickly. "Look at the dates of his visits to the clinic. They always coincide with official duties in other cities, according to his public schedule." "Falsifying official records," Marcus nodded. "That's a federal offense." Sarah, who had been silent, finally spoke. "So that's it. Do we have enough evidence now?" "Almost," Marcus replied. "We still need to find Vanessa Torres. She's the key to all of this. And something tells me she didn't disappear willingly." Emily, studying the screen with intense focus, pointed at a detail. "Look how she's walking in this photo, the last clinic visit before she vanished. It's different than in the other times." Rodriguez zoomed in. "What do you mean?" "She's moving like she's afraid," Emily explained. "I recognize that way of walking. It's how people move when they're forced to do something but try not to show it." Marcus felt a shiver. Emily's powers of observation were truly extraordinary and possibly vital to the case. Rodriguez do a complete search of every property registered to Coleman, his family, and that shell company. "If Vanessa's being held somewhere?" "I'm on it," his partner confirmed, fingers flying across the keyboard. Sarah hugged Emily again, noticing the child trembling slightly, not from fear, but from exhaustion. Even a brave warrior like her was still a child who needed rest. "I think it's time we head to the shelter," she said softly. "You need some sleep." Emily nodded reluctantly. "But you'll keep me informed, right? About everything you find." "Always," Marcus promised. "You're a crucial part of this team, Emily. Nothing happens without you knowing." Father Michael entered quietly, carrying blankets and some clean clothes. "The car is ready out back," he said. "The route is clear to Sister Mary's shelter." "Thank you, Father Michael," Marcus said. "Your help is invaluable." "It's the least I can do," the priest responded, looking at Emily with compassion. "This small one has done more for justice than many of us." As Sarah and Emily prepared to leave, Marcus gave his team one last briefing. "Rodriguez, keep investigating the properties. If you find anything suspicious, let me know immediately. I'll work my contacts in the press. It's time to build some public pressure." "You sure?" Sarah asked. "Won't that make them act even more desperately?" "Yes," Emily answered before Marcus could, "but it'll also make others pay attention. And the more people watch, the less freedom they have to act in the shadows," Marcus finished, once again struck by the child's insight. The distant sound of sirens made everyone tense, but Father Michael remained calm. "Don't worry, that's from the parish across town. Still, it's best you go now." Sarah took Emily's hand and followed the priest toward the back of the church. Before leaving, the girl turned one last time to Marcus and Rodriguez. "Find Vanessa," she requested. "Those babies need their mother." "We will," Marcus promised. "And when it's all over, we'll make sure justice is served." Emily smiled, that wise, determined smile that had become her trademark. "Justice isn't something you wait for. It's something you make happen. I learned that on the streets." With those words, she and Sarah vanished into the night, protected by darkness and the sanctity of the church grounds. Marcus turned back to Rodriguez, who was already working at his laptop again. "You know, Rodriguez," he said, watching the first rays of dawn through the church windows, "I think we're all learning a lot from that girl." "Yeah," Rodriguez agreed, without looking up. "And I have a feeling the biggest lessons are still ahead." Morning arrived, bringing not just a new day, but the promise that, no matter how hard anyone tried to bury it, the truth, like Emily always said, would find its way to the light. Because justice isn't something you wait for, it's something you make happen. And they were more than ready to make it happen, no matter the cost. The glow of the laptop screen illuminated Rodriguez's exhausted face in the makeshift office in the church's basement. After 72 hours with almost no sleep, he'd finally found something. "Marcus," he called, his voice hoarse but urgent. "You need to see this." Detective Marcus Silva, who'd been dozing in a nearby chair, woke instantly. "What have we got?" "Remember that shell company paying the clinic bills?" Rodriguez said, opening multiple windows on his computer. "Well, it's not the only one. I've uncovered an entire network of fake companies, all connected to the same scheme." Marcus leaned over the laptop, eyes scanning quickly. "This goes way beyond the twins' case, doesn't it?" "Way beyond," Rodriguez confirmed. "We're talking about millions in suspicious transactions over the last 3 years, all tied, in one way or another, to the Lieutenant Governor's office. Money laundering? Among other things." Rodriguez opened another file. "Look, regular payments to several private clinics, not just the one Vanessa visited, and they all have something in common." Marcus studied the data, feeling his stomach drop. "They're all obstetrics and gynecology clinics." "Exactly. And in each one I found records of a patient exe, same pattern as Vanessa's case." A heavy silence followed as both men realized what this implied. "How many cases?" Marcus finally asked. "Confirmed, 7 in the last 3 years. All following the same pattern. Young women, each with some professional link to the Lieutenant Governor or associated businesses. All of them vanish mysteriously after giving birth." Marcus began pacing in the cramped space, mind racing. "This isn't just one politician hiding an illegitimate child. It's a systematic abuse of power," Rodriguez finished. "And there's more. Remember how Emily said Vanessa looked scared in that last clinic visit?" He opened another folder containing encrypted emails he'd managed to recover. 2 weeks before she vanished, Vanessa started gathering evidence. She copied documents, made records. She knew she was in danger. "And that's why they made her disappear," Marcus said, feeling a cold anger rising. "But she was smarter than they realized." Rodriguez grinned slightly. "Before disappearing, she uploaded everything to a secure server. Took me 3 days to crack the encryption, but we have it all. All of it." Marcus grabbed his phone and dialed quickly. "Sarah. Sorry about the time, but I need to speak with Emily." Moments later, the girl's sleepy but alert voice came through the line. "Did you find her?" "Not yet," Marcus answered gently, "but we found something important. You were right about Vanessa being scared. Now we know why." He could almost see Emily sitting up straighter, fully awake now. "What did you discover?" Marcus hesitated, wondering how to explain to a 9-year-old. But then he remembered Emily wasn't a typical child. She'd seen and understood more of life's harshness than many adults. Vanessa wasn't the only one, Emily. There were others before her, other women who also had babies that were taken from them. Emily's voice was soft, but it carried understanding. "Yes, and Vanessa found out. She tried to gather evidence to expose it. And that's why they made her disappear," Emily concluded. "But she left the evidence somewhere safe, didn't she? She was clever." "Very clever," Marcus confirmed. "Now we have it." A pause followed before Emily spoke again. "What do we do now?" "Now," Marcus sighed, "we go to war." The next 12 hours were a blur of activity. Rodriguez worked non-stop, organizing and cataloging every piece of evidence, creating multiple backups on multiple servers. Marcus reached out to contacts in the media, setting the stage for what was coming. Sarah and Emily stayed at Sister Mary's shelter, now with stepped-up police protection. Not just a patrol car, but a whole team of trusted officers from Marcus's circle. Around noon, the first bombshell dropped. Scandal in the Lieutenant Governor's office. Documents reveal multi-million-dollar scheme. The headline in the city's main newspaper was just the beginning. In the hours that followed, more news outlets began publishing pieces of the story, each revealing a new aspect of the scheme. By early afternoon, Marcus's phone rang. The caller ID was unknown. "Silver." "Detective," a woman's trembling but determined voice spoke. "My name is Alexandra Winters. I saw the news. I was one of them." 2 years ago, Marcus motioned for Rodriguez to trace the call as he turned on a recorder. "Miss Winters, can you tell me your story?" What followed was a devastating account of manipulation, threats, and abuse of power. Alexandra had been an assistant in the Lieutenant Governor's office in 2023. After months of subtle harassment and psychological pressure, she ended up in a relationship with Coleman. When she got pregnant, she was forced into a protocol of secret clinic visits, constant threats, and finally, a forced disappearance after giving birth. "They kept me in a house out in the country for 6 months," she recounted, voice trembling. "They only let me go after I signed dozens of confidentiality forms and was given compensation, money for my silence. And your baby?" "They never let me see my child. They said the baby was sent for adoption overseas." Her voice cracked. "But after what I've been seeing in the news, I don't know what really happened." After Alexandra's call, it was as though a dam had burst. More women began coming forward, each with a similar story. The pattern Rodriguez had identified in the documents now had faces, names, and real-life tragedies behind them. "The media is in a frenzy," Rodriguez said, scrolling through online coverage. "The stocks of companies linked to the scheme are plummeting. The Senate is already convening an investigative committee." Marcus, reviewing fresh testimonies, looked up. "What about Coleman?" "No one can find him. Sources say he hasn't shown up at his office since last night." "He's running," a familiar voice said from the door. It was Emily, accompanied by Sarah. "Emily," Marcus stood, surprised. "What?" "She insisted on coming," Sarah explained. "Said she had something important to share." Emily approached the map Rodriguez had pinned on the wall, showing all the properties connected to the scheme. "I've been thinking, everyone's looking for the Lieutenant Governor in the obvious places, right? Mansions, luxury apartments. But," Marcus encouraged, recognizing the familiar spark in her eyes, "but people like that, when they're desperate, sometimes go to the simplest places. Places nobody would think to check." She pointed to a specific spot on the map, like an old caretaker's house on what's supposed to be an abandoned farm. Rodriguez quickly moved to the map. "How did you—" "The night I saw him abandon the babies," Emily said, "I noticed something else about the car besides the plate. It had red mud on the tires. That kind of mud only exists in the northern part of the state," Marcus finished, already picking up his phone. "Rodriguez, that old family farm that used to belong to Coleman's relatives." "Checking now," his partner answered, fingers flying over the keyboard. "Oh my, the property was officially sold years ago, but it still receives regular maintenance payments through one of the shell companies. And more importantly," Emily added, "it's the only place close enough for him to have gone there and back the night he abandoned the babies." Marcus looked at the little makeshift detective with renewed admiration. "Emily, you truly are extraordinary." The girl shrugged, continued, but a small smile played on her lips. "It's all in the details. People always leave clues, even if they don't realize it." "Rodriguez," Marcus called, already grabbing his jacket. "Notify the tactical unit. But keep this absolutely under wraps. If Coleman's there, Vanessa might be there too," Emily finished softly. The silence that followed was loaded with tension and anticipation. They were close, very close. The full truth lay just out of reach. "Emily," Marcus knelt to meet her eyes, "you've already done more for this case than we ever imagined. Now I need you to promise you'll stay here with Sarah, safe, while you do the dangerous part." Emily smiled sadly. "Don't worry. I learned on the streets that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is wait." Marcus felt his heart tighten. How could a child forced to grow up so quickly still maintain such wisdom and compassion? "We'll keep you informed," he promised, standing up. "Marcus," Emily called as he reached the door, "bring her back, the babies. They need their mother." "We'll bring her," he vowed. "And when this is over, we'll make sure no one can ever again use power and influence to hurt innocent people." As Marcus and Rodriguez left to lead the operation that might finally expose the entire truth, Emily sat down next to Sarah, gazing at the map on the wall. "It'll be okay," she said softly, more to herself than anyone else. "It has to be." Sarah put an arm around the little hero who had changed so many lives with her courage and insight. "It will be, sweetheart. Thanks to you, it will." Night fell over the city, But for the first time in a while, the darkness didn't feel as threatening. The truth, as Emily had said countless times, always found a way. And now, at last, that way was about to be fully revealed. The abandoned farm loomed in the darkness like a ghost from the past, its broken windows reflecting the last rays of the setting sun. The tactical team moved quietly, surrounding the property under Marcus Silva's discreet command. Movement in the caretaker's house, Rodriguez's voice crackled over the radio. Dim light, probably a lantern. Marcus adjusted his bulletproof vest, thinking of Emily and how her intuition had led them here. All units in position? Affirmative. Proceed with caution. Remember, we may have a hostage inside. The approach was methodical and precise, years of training and experience guiding every move. When they finally broke down the door, the scene they encountered would be forever etched in their memories. Richard Coleman, the powerful lieutenant governor, sat slumped on a simple wooden chair, a trembling revolver in his hand. And on a makeshift bed lay Vanessa Torres, pale, weak, but alive. "It's over, Coleman," Marcus said calmly, his weapon trained on him. "Put the gun down," Coleman laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "Over? You have no idea what you started, Silva. Do you know how many powerful people are involved?" "We know everything," Marcus replied. "All the other women are talking. Alexandra Winters, Monica Reynolds, all of them. The entire scheme is out in the open." Alexandra's name seemed to hit Coleman like a punch. His gun wavered further in his grasp. "They can't prove anything." "Can't they?" Marcus took a step forward. "What about the records Vanessa copied before you made her disappear? The clinic documents, the financial trail of your shell companies." "How?" Coleman began, but was interrupted by a weak voice from the bed. "I knew you'd slip up," Vanessa said, struggling to sit. "People like you always do. Power. Power makes you feel untouchable." "Shut up!" Coleman shouted, turning the gun on her. It was his fatal mistake. In a swift movement, the tactical officers disarmed and subdued him. The man who, mere hours ago, had been one of the most powerful politicians in the state now lay sobbing on the floor like a child. "My babies," Vanessa murmured as paramedics examined her. "He told me they died." "They're alive," Marcus assured her, stepping closer. "And safe. A very special little girl rescued them." Tears streamed down Vanessa's cheeks. "How?" "It's a long story," Marcus offered a gentle smile, "and you'll meet your little hero soon." In the hours that followed, the full truth came pouring out like an avalanche. Under the weight of overwhelming evidence, Coleman began to talk. It was a story of power, obsession, and cruelty spanning years. It had all started 3 years ago, when Coleman realized he could wield his power and influence over vulnerable young employees. What began as harassment soon escalated into a systematic scheme of abuse. When the women became pregnant, they were forced into a rigid protocol of silence and isolation. The earlier babies, he admitted during questioning, his arrogance finally broken, were sent overseas for adoption. Wealthy families, willing to pay a lot and ask no questions. But Vanessa was different, Marcus noted. Why? She found out everything. She got her hands on the records, pieced it all together, threatened to expose us. Coleman wiped a hand over his face. "I panicked. So you decided to keep her captive until she gave birth. And then," Coleman swallowed, "then she and the babies were going to permanently disappear. But you didn't count on a homeless girl with a heart bigger than your entire empire," Marcus remarked. Coleman looked confused at the mention of Emily. "How could some street kid destroy everything I built? Because you built it on lies and cruelty." A familiar voice came from the interrogation room door. Sarah, who had arrived to observe the statement as a social worker. "Emily built on truth and compassion. It's that simple." News of Coleman's arrest and Vanessa's rescue exploded across the media landscape like a tsunami. Subsequent revelations about the abuse and baby trafficking scheme shocked the entire country. More former victims continued to come forward, each story more heartbreaking than the last. At the hospital where Vanessa was recovering, Emily finally met the mother of the twins she had saved. It was a silent, emotional meeting. Words seemed inadequate to convey the depth of the moment. "Thank you," Vanessa whispered, holding Emily's small hands. You saved not only my children but all of us." Emily, with her characteristic wisdom, just smiled. Sometimes the most unlikely people can make the biggest difference. Marcus, watching from the doorway, couldn't stop thinking about how a series of seemingly unconnected events, a homeless girl, 2 abandoned babies, a brave secretary, had converged to expose and topple a power structure that seemed untouchable. The Coleman case, as it became known, would go down in state history. But for those directly involved, its significance went far beyond legal and political matters. It was a story of courage, compassion, and the transformative power of truth. And at the very center of it all was a little girl who, despite having so little, had given so much to make a difference. "What happens now?" Emily asked Marcus as they left the hospital that evening. "Now," Marcus smiled. "Now we begin to rebuild. To seek justice not just for Vanessa and her babies, but for all the other victims, too." Emily nodded thoughtfully. "What about the other mothers, the ones whose babies were taken before?" "We'll find them," Marcus promised. "All of them. And we'll bring their children home." It was only the beginning of an even longer journey. But now, with the truth exposed and justice in motion, there was hope. And sometimes, as Emily had proven, hope is all it takes to start changing the world. Laura Bennett turned off the TV with trembling hands. The news report about the Coleman scandal had just ended, but her heart still pounded. The footage of the rescued twins, the mention of an affair, the dates, everything lined up too perfectly. Her phone rang, making her jump. It was her sister, Karen. "Did you see?" Karen asked without preamble. "I did," Laura answered, her voice almost a whisper. "It's them, isn't it? The babies you—" "Lost," Laura finished, tears already spilling down her cheeks. The babies, they told me, had died during delivery. Laura's story was different from the other Coleman victims. She hadn't been an employee in his office, manipulated or harassed. Her only crime had been falling in love with the wrong man, a businessman named Michael Harrison, who, she would later learn, was one of Coleman's main operatives. When she became pregnant, Michael insisted on using a specific doctor at a private clinic. Laura, blinded by love and promises of a future together, never questioned it, until the day she gave birth, when everything went wrong, or so she was told. "You have to go to the police," Karen insisted. "And say what?" Laura replied bitterly. "That I think the babies they said died at birth were actually stolen and abandoned, that the man I loved was part of a criminal ring." "Yes, exactly that. Laura, you saw the report. They're investigating all connected cases. The dates match," Laura acknowledged. "And it's the same clinic." The doorbell rang, interrupting their conversation. Still holding the phone, Laura opened the door to find 2 detectives. "Ms. Laura Bennett?" the taller one asked, showing his badge. "I'm Detective Marcus Silva, and this is my partner, Rodriguez. May we come in? We need to talk to you about Michael Harrison and about your babies." Laura's world spun for a moment. "Karen," she whispered into the phone, "I have to go." The next few minutes were surreal. Sitting in her own living room, Laura listened as the detectives explained how they'd found her. Clinic records, financial connections, Michael Harrison's confession after his arrest. "He confessed everything," Marcus said gently. "How Coleman used him to identify women who could be easily manipulated or silenced. In your case." "He chose me," Laura said, her voice trembling with anger and pain. "Our whole relationship, it was just to gain access to your babies," Rodriguez confirmed, speaking quietly. "Coleman had international buyers lined up, but something went wrong at the last moment. Michael lost his nerve," Marcus went on. "He couldn't go through with the sale, but he also didn't have the courage to stand up to Coleman. So he abandoned them," Laura finished, tears now flowing freely. "And a homeless girl saved them." Marcus gave a slight smile. "Emily?" "Yes. And thanks to her, your babies are alive and safe." Laura stood suddenly. "I need to see them. Now." "That's why we're here," Marcus replied. "But first, there are some things you need to understand. The process will be delicate. We need DNA tests. There will be legal procedures." "I don't care," Laura interrupted. I waited 9 months to hold my babies, then spent weeks thinking they were dead. Now that I know they're alive," her voice cracked. Rodriguez exchanged a look with his partner before speaking. "There's someone else you should meet first, someone who played a crucial role in keeping your children safe." "Emily," Laura guessed. "Yes. She's been extraordinary throughout this." On the drive to the hospital, Laura heard all about Emily, how the 9-year-old had not only rescued the twins but also helped expose the entire scheme. Each detail made Laura's heart ache, thinking of how a street child had done more for her babies than their own father ever had. At the hospital, Sarah met them at the entrance. "Emily's with the twins," she explained. "She hasn't left their side since this all came out." Laura's legs felt weak as they approached the nursery. Through the glass, she saw a small figure sitting between 2 cribs, reading a book. "Hi," Emily said when they entered, her voice soft yet sure. "You must be Laura. Your babies are really beautiful." Laura covered her mouth with her hands, tears streaming down her face at the sight of her children up close for the first time. They're okay. They're healthy." "Very," Emily smiled. "The boy is quieter, but the girl, she has a strong personality. Kinda like you, I think. How do you—" "Their eyes," Emily said simply. "They're just like yours." Laura approached the cribs slowly, as if afraid everything would vanish if she moved too quickly. "You can pick them up," Emily encouraged. "They're your babies." "They always have been." With trembling hands, Laura first lifted the girl, then the boy. The moment she held them both for the first time was as if the whole universe paused to witness their reunion. "Hi, my loves," she whispered through tears. "Mommy's here." "Mommy's finally here," Emily watched quietly, smiling serenely. "They waited for you," she said softly. Even without knowing they waited. Laura looked at the little hero who had saved her children. "Emily, how can I ever thank you? What you did, just love them," Emily answered with that wisdom far beyond her age. "Love them for all the days you lost. That's the best thanks you can give me." Marcus, standing at the door, felt his own heart tighten. In all his years of police work, he had witnessed many family reunions, but few as profound as this. "The DNA results should be back in a few days," he said gently. "But seeing the 3 of you together, I don't think there's any doubt." Laura seemed not to hear. She was immersed in the moment with her babies. Emily stood, giving the family their space. "Emily," Laura called when the girl reached the door, you'll keep visiting them, right? I want them to know the amazing person who saved them." Emily glanced at Marcus and Sarah, who both nodded encouragingly. "I'd like that a lot," she replied. Leaving the room, Sarah draped an arm around Emily's shoulders. "You did something extraordinary, you know that." Emily shrugged, but there was a small smile on her face. "I only did what was right. And now—" She glanced back through the glass at Laura holding her babies. "Now they're where they always belonged." The soft sound of Laura humming a lullaby echoed down the corridor, a melody of love, loss, and reunion that touched the hearts of everyone present. It was the sound of a family reuniting, a circle finally closing. And for Emily, it was confirmation that sometimes doing the right thing, even when it seems impossible, can change someone's world forever. The courtroom was silent as Judge Helena Fields began reading her decision. Laura clutched the twins tightly, as though she feared someone might still try to take them away. Emily, seated between Sarah and Marcus, watched everything with those wise, observant eyes. "Considering all the evidence presented," the judge began, "including conclusive DNA test results, witness testimonies, and extensive documentation from the Coleman case, this court grants permanent custody of minors Alice and Thomas Bennett to their biological mother, Laura Bennett." A collective sigh of relief swept through the room. Laura hugged the babies, silent tears rolling down her face. Emily smiled, that serene expression she'd come to wear so naturally. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "given the exceptional nature of this case and the criminal involvement of the biological father, Michael Harrison, his parental rights are hereby terminated." Sarah gently squeezed Emily's shoulder, knowing how much the girl had contributed to this moment. Without her brave testimony and sharp eye in noting the license plate, none of this would have been possible. After the hearing, everyone gathered at a nearby cafe. It was a moment of celebration, but also of transition. Laura radiated happiness, holding Alice while Thomas dozed peacefully in his stroller. "I still can't believe it's finally over," Laura said, gazing adoringly at her children, "that they're officially mine." "They always were yours," Emily replied gently. "The paperwork just confirms what was already true." Laura looked at the little girl who had changed so many lives. "Emily, I'll never be able to thank you enough." "You don't have to," Emily interrupted kindly. "Just let me visit them sometimes." "Sometimes?" Laura laughed. "Emily, you're part of this family now. You can come over whenever you want." Sarah, who had been unusually quiet, chose that moment to speak up. "Actually, about that," she took a deep breath. "Emily, there's something I'd like to discuss with you." The girl turned towards Sarah, her sharp eyes already sensing what was coming. "These past few weeks," Sarah said, "having you in my home, taking care of you, it made me realize something I think I've known from the moment you walked into that hospital." Emily waited patiently, though her heart was pounding. If it's something you also wish for," Sarah swallowed. "I'd like to adopt you, officially, legally, forever." The silence that followed was heavy with emotion. Emily stared at Sarah for a long moment, then glanced at Laura and the twins, and finally at Marcus, who watched with a proud smile. "You really want that?" Emily asked, her voice quiet and vulnerable in a way few had ever heard. "Even knowing everything about my past, the streets, especially because of that," Sarah replied firmly. "You are the strongest, bravest, and kindest person I've ever met, Emily. Nothing would make me happier than having you as my daughter." Emily stood slowly from her chair and, for the first time since anyone had known her, acted exactly like the 9-year-old she was. She threw herself into Sarah's arms, sobbing. "Yes," she whispered through tears. "Yes, please." Laura, cradling Alice with tears in her own eyes, smiled at the scene. "Looks like I'm not the only one forming a family today." Marcus cleared his throat, trying to mask his own emotion. "I've already started the paperwork," he said. "Since Emily is technically under police protection, and considering the Coleman case context, the adoption process should be expedited." Sarah still held Emily, stroking her hair. "No matter how long it takes, what matters is that we're together now." The rest of the afternoon passed in laughter, stories and dreams for the future. Laura talked about decorating the twins' bedroom. Emily shared stories of her first days caring for them in the hospital, and Sarah tossed around ideas for Emily's new room. "You know what's funny?" Emily mused during a quiet moment. "When I saw that car that night and decided to follow it and write down the plate, I never imagined I was starting a story that would change so many lives." "Including your own," Sarah said, hugging her. "Yeah," Emily agreed, watching Laura with the twins. "I guess families can form in the most unexpected times and places." Marcus, about to leave, paused for one final comment. "Emily, in all my years on the force, I've never seen anyone so young make such a big impact. You didn't just save those babies. You exposed a criminal scheme, brought justice to multiple families, and in the process, found a family of my own." Emily finished softly. Laura approached with the twins. "Emily, I wanted to ask you something. I know Sarah will be your official mom soon, but would you like to be Alice and Thomas's godmother?" Emily's eyes went wide. "Godmother? Me? I can't think of anyone better," Laura smiled. "You're already part of their story, part of their lives. It's only natural that you'd officially be part of the family too." Emily glanced at Sarah, who nodded in encouragement. I'd love to." "Then it's settled," Laura said happily. "Our families are officially linked." As the sun set outside, casting a golden glow through the cafe windows, the small group remained together, chatting, strengthening bonds, and making new memories. It was a moment of transition, of new beginnings, and of forging ties that went beyond blood. Ties built on courage and unconditional love. For Emily, who had spent so long alone on the streets, it was almost surreal to be there, surrounded by love and acceptance. Once a girl with no one, she was now a daughter, a godmother, and a hero. For Sarah, every smile on Emily's face confirmed that her decision to adopt the girl was not just right, but inevitable. Like her entire career as a nurse and social worker had been leading up to this. And for Laura, holding her precious twins and watching the special bond between them and their savior, it was the realization of a dream she'd been forced to abandon, a dream of a complete, happy family. "I think we need to celebrate," Sarah suggested. "How about a special dinner? Our first official meal as a family. All the families," Laura added, smiling. Emily looked around, at Sarah, her soon-to-be official mother, at Laura and the twins, her extended family, at Marcus, who had become a protective uncle figure of sorts. It was more than she'd ever dreamed of having. "Yes," she said simply, "all the families together." As they left the cafe, Emily paused for a moment to gaze up at the sky. Somewhere out there, other kids like her were still fighting to survive on the streets. Other babies might still need saving. More injustices awaited exposure. But for now, in this perfect moment, she was exactly where she needed to be, surrounded by love, acceptance, and the promise of a bright future. "Come on, daughter," Sarah called gently. "Let's go home, daughter." The word echoed in Emily's heart like a perfect melody. Yes, she thought, taking Sarah's hand, she finally had a place to call home. And more importantly, people to call family. Sarah's backyard was decked out with colorful balloons and streamers dancing in the gentle evening breeze. A large banner hung between two trees, proclaiming, "Welcome officially to the family, Emily." It was a special day for many reasons. Not only did it mark the finalization of Emily's adoption, but it also celebrated 6 months since the twins had been reunited with Laura. And as an added bonus, that very morning a judge had announced Richard Coleman's sentence: 30 years in prison, no parole. Emily, now wearing a blue dress chosen especially for the occasion, watched guests arrive from her favorite spot on the garden swing. It felt surreal that just 6 months ago she'd been sleeping in alleys, fighting each day to survive. "Deep in thought?" Sarah asked, approaching with 2 cups of hot chocolate, a tradition that had started on that very first night in the hospital. "Just taking it all in," Emily replied, accepting her cup. "Sometimes I worry I'll wake up and find it was all a dream." Sarah sat beside her on the swing. "It's no dream, sweetheart. You're my daughter now, officially, legally, and most importantly, in my heart." The sound of children laughing caught their attention. Laura had just arrived with the twins, who at 6 months old were bundles of energy and joy. As Emily had predicted, Alice was the more vocal of the two, always giggling and reaching for everything in sight, while Thomas was more observant, with the same thoughtful eyes as his godmother Emily. "Look who's here to see their big sister," Laura announced, walking over with the babies. That was how they referred to Emily now, the twins' big sister. It was a title she carried with immense pride. "Hey, little ones," Emily grinned, taking Alice in her arms while Sarah held Thomas. "I've gotten so big. And thanks to you, they're growing up exactly where they should be, with family," a familiar voice chimed in. It was Marcus, arriving alongside Rodriguez and carrying a large, wrapped present. "Marcus!" Emily exclaimed, her eyes lighting up at the sight of the detective who'd become such an important figure in her life. "You made it." "Wouldn't miss this day for anything," he smiled, placing the present on the table. "Especially because I have some important updates to share." Before he could continue, more guests began to arrive. Dr. Thompson and his hospital team, Sister Mary from the shelter, several officers who'd been part of the investigation, and even Judge Helena Fields, who had overseen both the twins' case and Emily's adoption. Once everyone had gathered in the yard, Marcus asked for their attention. "Today we celebrate for many reasons," he began. "Not only are we formally welcoming a wonderful new family member, but I can also announce that, thanks to our team's tireless work and the evidence gathered from the Coleman case, we've located all the other mothers and babies affected by the scheme." A ripple of surprise and joy spread through the crowd. In the past few weeks, 5 families have been reunited. Babies who were sent for international adoptions are being brought back to their biological mothers, and the process of healing and reconciliation is beginning for all of them. Emily hugged Alice closer, tears of happiness in her eyes. All of them. Every mother found her baby. Every single one, Marcus confirmed. And it all started with you, Emily. Your bravery in saving Alice and Thomas didn't just reunite one family. It triggered a chain of events that's bringing justice and healing to so many others. Sarah wrapped an arm around her now official daughter, her heart overflowing with pride and love. And there's more, Rodriguez added, smiling. Because of this case, the state is overhauling its adoption laws, stricter regulations, tighter checks, added protections for vulnerable mothers. They're calling it Emily's Law. Emily blushed deeply. A law named after me? Because you taught us an important lesson, Judge Field spoke up. That justice and compassion can come from the most unexpected places, and that one single person, no matter how young or seemingly powerless, can change the entire system for the better. Laura, holding Thomas, stepped forward. And you didn't just change the system, you changed lives. Look at these babies. They're growing up surrounded by so much love, so much family. They have a mother who adores them, an amazing godmother who saved them, an Aunt Sarah who spoils them, and an extended family that's huge, Sarah added, looking around at all the assembled people. Everyone here is part of this story of redemption and love. Emily looked at all the smiling faces, her mother Sarah, Laura and the twins, Marcus and Rodriguez, the medical team who cared for the babies, the officers who protected them, Sister Mary who helped other street kids. It was a much bigger, more diverse family than she'd ever dreamed of having. I think it's time for cake, Sarah announced, heading toward the decorated table. As everyone gathered to sing, Emily lingered for a moment, soaking in the scene. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky pink and gold. The twins' laughter mixed with the cheerful chatter of the adults. The sweet smell of cake wafted through the air. Hey, Sarah called gently. You okay? Emily smiled at her mother. How wonderful it was to finally use that word. Everything's perfect. I was just thinking, sometimes the hardest things we go through lead us right where we need to be. Sarah kissed the top of Emily's head. You're extraordinarily wise for your age, you know that. I learned a lot on the streets, Emily said, shrugging. But now, she glanced at her family gathered together, at the twins she'd rescued, at the many lives transformed. Now I'm learning about love, family, and hope. Alice's laughter distracted everyone. The little girl had managed to dip her hand into the cake before it was even cut, prompting an outburst of laughter. That's my goddaughter, Emily chuckled, rushing over to help Laura clean up the mess. As the party continued, with stories exchanged, bonds strengthened, and new memories made, one thing was clear. Sometimes the greatest victories in life don't come from grand battles or dramatic moments, but from small acts of courage and kindness that ripple far beyond their starting point. Emily had begun this story as a lonely street girl, trying to do the right thing on a cold winter's night. Now she was a daughter, a sister, a godmother, and a hero, not just to her own family, but to all the other families who had been reunited thanks to her initial act of bravery. And as the sun finally set, giving way to a star-filled sky, the garden lights turned on automatically, creating a magical, cozy glow. Beneath those lights, an extraordinary family, formed not by blood but by courageous choices and unconditional love, celebrated not just an official adoption, but the triumph of love over power, truth over manipulation, and hope over despair. It was, truly, a complete redemption. To family, Marcus proposed a toast, lifting his glass. To all families, Emily corrected softly, raising her cup of juice. To all families, everyone echoed in unison. And in that perfect moment, beneath the stars and surrounded by so much love, Emily knew with absolute certainty that she had finally found her place in the world. It wasn't an address or a house, but the people around her, people who had chosen to make a difference, who had chosen to fight for justice, who had chosen love. It was the perfect end to a story that began with a brave act on a cold night, and the perfect beginning for the many stories yet to come.